Kia ora koutou, welcome everyone to the Fortune Theatre for this session as part of the New Zealand Young Writers Festival. This is a show we like to call Guy Williams Ask Me Anything, so half of the success of the show is entirely up to you and the questions that you have for him. This is an IRL version of an online classic featuring stand-up comedian, sketch writer, broadcaster, prankster, political science graduate, former teen basketball sensation and one-time TV Guide Sexiest male television personality.
You're just reading this from the program.
Coming all the way from behind the pot plant, ladies and gentlemen, Guy Williams.
Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Shit, the applause didn't last to me getting to my seat. How bad is that? Thanks for coming along, guys. I'm excited about this. It's a good opportunity for me to share my wisdom. Don't laugh like, yeah, whatever.
We've got a whole hour.
Hey, welcome along, guys. Thanks for coming. You're actually somehow managed to be late. I don't know how that's possible. We've had a rolling. Why is it quite easy? It's a big. No, it's not. It's an octagon and a street. They shouldn't call it the octagon. They should call it the lollipop. It comes down and goes back round. No, I thought that was a good observation, but no one was into it.
That's all right. Hopefully you're just setting the bar high early on.
Yeah.
So, first things, I mean, we should get this out of the way, Guy, I guess. Are the pranks real?
Yeah, did I email you about that?
Yeah.
I was going to say that straight away.
Right.
The main question I get is, are the pranks real? And yeah, they normally are on John and Ben. I can't think of a fake prank we've ever done. The great thing about doing real pranks is they almost always go bad. And normally the way, it's really weird when you shoot, because people really like pranks. I was in South Auckland last night talking to some teenage boys. That sounded weird, okay. I did a gig and some teenage boys were there and I was yelling to them afterwards and they were asking about the pranks, which is because weirdly, a lot of kids watch John and Ben, which is quite funny. One of my favourite jokes is Stephen Wright has a joke that goes, I wrote a few children's books, not on purpose. And I really like the idea of trying to write a proper book and it being so terrible that it turns into a children's novel. And I think that's what we've kind of achieved with John and Ben, where we tried to make a late-night sophisticated show and we aimed for that and we accidentally achieved something that really resonates with 15-year-olds. It's good because John and Ben has quite a broad base, but it has a weird, and that's kind of why we moved to 7 o'clock, is because it was weird that so many people were coming up and going, I watched the show with my kids. And first of all, we're going, that's terrible parenting. And Steve and I were going, a lot of the things, especially that John and Ben are into, like pranks and stuff like that, really, really appeal to kids. And the pranks always go worse. I'm not normally involved in many of the pranks. Like Jono breaking his collarbone, they're dumb ideas, and that's why I don't like being involved with them, because they always go bad. Everyone must have been involved in some pranks at home or something like that, where you make the floor slippery or something, and then the person falls over and breaks their arm, and you're like, oh, why did I even try it? It always goes bad. Jono the other day was supposed to be a human tackling bag. First tackle from an Auckland Blues player, shattered his shoulder, and he was in a sling for the rest of the season, which completely effed up continuity, because our show's supposed to look like it's from the week. And it's real weird if Jono in some sketches is like, oh, my arm's all good, and then other sketches he's like a disabled person. So yeah, that was the story of pranks.
There's more to the show than pratfalls and pranks, though. And
it's just what resonates with young people.
Yeah.
Especially.
I mean, do you feel like what you're trying to do is carve out something more intelligent in the sketch writing that you're doing for the show as a counterbalance to that, or not?
We have a whole variety. The great thing about John and Ben is that we have a whole variety, and as opposed to just a show, if you make a sitcom or something like that, you may try and make it broad, and so you're like, oh, we don't want to offend people on this hand, and we don't want to do things that's too intelligent on this hand, or we don't want to do things that are going to be too child. You're trying to be one thing to old people, and John and Ben has found a good way of getting around that by just doing a whole lot of crap that doesn't really fit together, that is hopefully something for everyone. So it's kind of going back to the days of a variety show where you have some things that are political, some things that are smart, some things that are dumb, some things that are physical, some things that are even some things hopefully that could be like interesting. Like we do interviews on the couch now, and sometimes they're not always that funny. Sometimes they might just be just a good chat with someone. Yeah.
But that can work. I mean, that's the Jon Stewart model, right?
Yeah. So the way I do comedy, and people often go there, you try to like lift the bar of the show or something. Not at all. I just try and do what I like and what I think is funny, and that is different to what John and Ben like, and different to what Rose likes, and different to what the producers like. And if I just do what I like and just put that's just a couple of minutes of the show, and then people who like me like the bits I do, and maybe will watch the other bits, and vice versa. And so as a result, you get to appeal to a broader base without necessarily like making big sacrifices in any area. Yeah.
Is much of the stuff that you're writing ideas that you had maybe for a stand-up routine that it turns out you can't work as a monologue and needs more visual cues or other people or...
Yeah, no, well now we do stuff that, just like stand-up stuff, we've got a green screen like in the studio and we can just do stuff live to the audience that's like a stand-up routine, but you might take on a character or something like that. The way I always do comedy is just try and come up with funny ideas, and then I don't really think about...
That helps.
Yeah. And then don't really think about where they fit at all. Like because I do a lot of things. I do radio, Twitter is my main focus, and and I also do John and Ben, and so you just do it. And sometimes it's visual and it will only work on TV, or sometimes it only exists as a tweet. Twitter's normally, I actually really like Twitter as a medium. Because I can't believe I just said it as a medium. What a loser, taking it real seriously. But Twitter's a really good place to test out, as people have probably noticed, test out jokes. And people always give me shit for doing jokes on John and Ben that I've done on Twitter, but I'm like, that's because Twitter's like a warm-up gag. And Twitter's a very small corner of New Zealand as well. Twitter will be like maybe 1 or 2% of the population. So if it works on Twitter, then chances are the broader country is going to like it and stuff like that.
I mean, given that this is a writers' festival, just talking about writing a little bit, and you say that the way that you work is you think of a bunch of stuff that you think is funny and jam it together. And you mentioned Stephen Wright, who is essentially non-sequiturs and one-liners, and that's sort of the Mitch Hedberg school as well.
Yeah.
At the other end of the literary spectrum, you have writers like Stuart Lee, who are constructing really dense, self-referential, hour-long monologues.
Yeah.
But people are kidding themselves if they don't think that stand-up comedy is a writing exercise, generally speaking. I'm
glad you mentioned Stuart Lee, because if people don't know him and are into political comedy, then Stuart Lee's one of my favourite comedians. We didn't even talk about that. I love Stuart Lee, one of my favourite British comedians. He's pretty rough, so if you're easily offended, then he's maybe not for you.
He's very hefty too. It's very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long stuff.
So Stuart Lee, he's quite interesting because while he does dense stuff, he doesn't often. He actually subscribes to the same. I just like jokes and like individual jokes, and I find it really hard. And there's a lot of comedians now who are from a theatre background, which is really good because they always have like a proper show with a narrative and stuff like that. Whereas my narrative is always very loose. And I just want to do funny bit after funny bit, and they might have more weight to them, like they might be political, or they might have some sort of purpose. But the whole show that I normally put together, just like John and Ben, has no real like through line or story arc, or it's just a bunch of funny things in a row. That's why I like to do it, because that's why I've always liked one-liner comedians, like my favourite comedians. Stephen Wright, Mitch Hedberg, Dimitri Martin. I quite like Milton Jones in the UK. People like that, just like joke writers. That's why I love Twitter as well. And I think Stuart Lee works like that as well a little bit. Like his shows normally don't have too much of a, like he always says he does a show on BBC called Stuart Lee's Comedy Vehicle. Those shows are very loosely, he'll do one that's literally called Books, and he covers everything from a rapper's book to political memoirs and stuff like that. It's pretty loose. We've already lost the ODT. They're like, we've had enough. Absolutely had enough of this shit. So yeah, I'm really bad, and that's why I was really stoked to be asked to the Writers' Festival, but the biggest skill I've got to work on as a writer is actually finishing narratives, and that's where, when we write sketches on John and Ben, I'm often quite good at coming up with a sketch and coming up with the jokes.
Oh, the ending is the hardest thing.
The ending's the hardest thing, and we always call it a kicker, and we're always like, we want to finish on some sort of relief or some sort of kaboom, that's where that finished. which I don't always think is necessary, but for our show, we just consider it to be a rule. You've got to have like a kind of punch at the end. And
It can't just be a giant animated foot.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how Monty Python, one of the best sketch groups of all time, they never had good outs. Like their outs were literally like the police would come and like arrest them. Like they literally outed to a movie where the police showed up and go, "This is silly, make it stop," and arrested them. And the police weren't even they weren't even like medieval police. Like they were. Well, are these questions coming up onto the stage? This is great. This is bloody great. The problem is there's so many questions. So many questions are going to get lost this way.
Could someone toss that one up as well?
The paper dart theory didn't work as well. It's very distracting.
I have a question. The first of these questions is, how do you keep your own style and flavour? I'm assuming it refers to your comedy, but it could be your sartorial elegance.
Yeah. So this is my advice. I always try, because it's quite interesting. I always have good advice for everyone but myself. And I always thought
The builder's house is always falling down.
It's real easy to pick out what other people are doing wrong, but when it's yourself, it's really hard to be aware of yourself and also to criticise yourself and stuff like that. It's really hard to do. But for my solution to everyone's problems and to every problem that I have is always, as I said earlier, just do what I think is funny or do what I think is good. So that's always the style. Is just if it makes me laugh, then it's good to go. And I used to have weird rules and things that I wouldn't do, and I just threw them out the window. I'm like, if I think it's funny, I shouldn't think that physical comedy or doing something that's really lowbrow is below me, because I'm not trying to establish a brand or anything like that. I'm just trying to get a laugh. And I do have a couple other things that I use, but I don't try and have no rules. Yeah.
What is it like working with Sharon Casey?
Bloody, that's good. Who else is an Edge fan? That's a bloody good. Sharon is bloody good value, to be honest. She's very funny and yeah, a lot of fun. That's the good thing about radio. It's just like bloody screwing around, having a laugh, and if you're enjoying yourself, then hopefully the listener will be too. Who knows? Who knows if that's actually the case?
Nielsen,
yeah. Whoever does the survey rating. Well, we did really well in the last rating, so maybe that works, but I don't know. But yeah, that's the only thing you can do, though. Really, it's really weird. You can't bend anyone into something they do. You can't. You can't. I couldn't all of a sudden start doing deep one-man plays about depression or something like that, because it's just not something that is naturally my skill set or I'm not a theatre writer or anything like that. So maybe in the future I'll develop those skills. I don't know, but at the moment you can't force yourself, which I like going to what's natural and what's easy.
This is your first radio job?
Yes, I never had an intention to get into radio, but I never had any intentions to get into TV. But they're really good. I just like being a comedian and trying to be funny in any medium. And to be honest, radio is probably the hardest, especially for what I'm good at, which is probably joke writing. It's the hardest medium because you're just riffing basically for like 4 hours. It's really long form. So it'd be really good for like an improviser and not so good for someone like me, because I literally started comedy so slowly. Like in comedy, a lot of people probably know this if you've seen the same comedian twice. In stand-up comedy, you do the same. You have like an act, and you do the same jokes over and over and over again. And that's why it's crazy when people go, "It's so hard what you do." You obviously don't know that the comedian is not making it up on the spot. That is just an illusion. That's called the illusion of spontaneity. And everyone just has material. And it's kind of depressing, actually, how long comedians will hold on to jokes for. Sharon always gives me crap. One of my good intro jokes is, some of you might have seen me on TV, first New Zealander ever to appear on Piha Rescue, both as a host and a victim. But I've literally been doing that without even noticing, because it's just because when you start a gig, you've got to have a good joke to start with. You've got to go, "Hello, my name's Guy," and then have a gag. It's not compulsory, like there's no rules to comedy, but it is like a real helpful thing just to get them laughing and relax the audience into thinking you're funny. And I did that joke like for literally 2 years, and when people can start quoting your jokes back to you, and there's definitely comedians at the Classic in Auckland, where it's bloody awkward, where they'll be doing this big like 2-minute joke, and it'll be building up to the big punchline, and a punter who's drunk, who's seen them like 4 times, and like sick of hearing this joke, will yell out the punchline, And if they yell it loud enough and enough people hear it, it completely kills the joke, and it's really hard for the comedian. Like, you've got to almost to respond to that. If someone gets your punchline, then, and it happens to me occasionally, but not often. And I try, and the British way of doing comedy is normally to write a new hour every year. And so I do that at the Comedy Festival in Auckland and Wellington. Unfortunately, it doesn't come down here. Try and do a new show every year. So hopefully, if you see me once a year, hopefully you'll see new jokes and recycle them.
I was reading something recently about kind of comedy and it's maybe it's a particularly British tradition, but in the comedians in the vaudeville tradition, there was just kind of a common pool of jokes. So people weren't really writing them. And so at the side of the stage, they'd have a list of them. And as the first act told those jokes, they'd be crossed off so that the next people came in knew that they had to only choose from the ones that were still left. Like jazz standards or something.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's crazy how that's how you used to, and I don't even know how, like, I'm quite interested in the history of stand-up and stuff like that, and stand-up, there's a very strong rule that you write your own jokes and you don't steal jokes. It's a really strong rule. It's really embarrassing if you get accused of stealing jokes. I've been accused before of stealing jokes. And normally it's not that you've stolen a joke, it's just that you've written something that's very similar to someone else's. And that normally comes into play when you're writing not very good jokes. That's normally the sign. Like, if you're doing stuff that other people have done, or if you do a tweet that everyone else has done on Twitter, then you haven't nailed it, basically. Which we're all guilty of from time to time, just doing the obvious gag that's always there. And that's one of the weird things about working in TV and radio, because that doesn't exist there. And it's happening more and more, and because stand-up comedians are getting hired more and more, it is. But in radio, people steal jokes all the time, and because radio is kind of, what is so weird going into commercial radio, because not necessarily the Edge is like this, but radio in general, because there's only 2 radio stations in reality, there's 2 radio companies. Hey. What are you saying, hey? Who do you work for?
He does a show at Radio 1.
Radio 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's student radio as well, so sorry, but in nationally... No, radio, you can't hear Radio 1 in Nelson, can you?
No.
Unless you stream it through the internet?
Yeah.
And
there are 2 commercial networks.
Yeah, 2 commercial networks, yeah. And so, but it's really weird going into radio. I've worked there for a year, and it's like going back in time. It's like sexist jokes are okay. It's like there's no HR department. It's a little bit of, it was like going back to the Wild West, and like, there's so many like sexual harassment cases waiting to happen, and I found it really backwards. And another way it was backwards was like vaudeville, where everyone was just like sharing around the same jokes. And before the internet, radio stations actually used to get their prep from like a fax machine that would fax through all the stories of the day, and like celebrity news and stuff would fax it through. So every radio station, no matter what one you listen to, would often have the same angles on things, just because they wouldn't be writing them themselves. But often radio stations still will just steal things off Reddit or Twitter or something like that, which is something that BuzzFeed, that's perfect, and it's something that's probably needs to change. Radio's kind of weirdly backwards like that.
On the stealing jokes thing, I remember again reading something about, and maybe it was an obituary for Robin Williams, but they talked about how there was a comedy club in LA, say, and there'd be an alarm that would go off when a comedian came in, so that you knew that you wouldn't use your best jokes because they might get stolen. Yeah. And it rang twice if Robin Williams came in, and you wrapped up your routine and got out of there.
Yeah. That's, you know a lot about comedy, eh? That's really interesting, eh? Robin Williams used to apparently steal people's jokes, but then when they found out that he stole them, he used to just pay them heaps of money because he's rich as heck. Which I'd be happy with. I'd be like, yes, thank you for the money. But it depends, because the thing about Robin Williams is he was a great comedian, but he wasn't a good writer. So he was like all stage presence, all charisma, all acting, but very little in the way of actually like writing a punchline. Whereas I've been the opposite. I started completely with punchlines, with like literally like basically reading jokes off a piece of paper, and then have slowly developed a little bit of timing and stuff like that. And it's quite interesting because I've actually moved now. You didn't talk about having jokes. It's been quite awkward for me on John and Ben. We have jokes written for us now. Like, we have writers who are other comedians and my friends, and that is quite an awkward position to be in now for me, because I've always written my own stuff, and often my stuff is improvised anyway, if it's on the street or something. So it's always been mine, and it's been quite weird recently having scripts like submitted for me, and then necessarily doing... One of my favourite things I did recently was John Key's Apology Wine.
So great.
Yeah, and I did that and took the credit for it, but I... wrote very little of it. Like I obviously tweaked it and delivered things in my own words. It might have contributed like 1 or 2 little bits, but none of that was me. Whereas the week before, my one about not coming to New Zealand if Hillary Clinton gets elected president, which really well, that was 100% me. So just kind of like from week to week, it kind of changes. But it's something that I've got to get used to, is having people write for me, which is kind of like I'm Bob Hope or some shit. It's quite weird.
Are you cold?
Am I cold? Yeah, I've found Dunedin quite cold so far, but that's because I've been softened up. I actually miss the cold because I'm from Nelson. It's has that South Island like little bit of chill. Yeah, shout out to Nelson. Holla, one other guy. My bloody brother came. That was a bad attempt at a joke, eh? When you say, it's like classic joke, like whenever you have like a heckle or like a beer falls over at a gig or something like that, the standard heckler response is, Dad's home, or something like that, or if someone if a woman shouts at you, you go like, shut up, mum, or something. It's like the real classic, it's the real cliche. Sometimes that's the one place where the vaudeville routine still exists.
Right, yeah, right.
Often comedians will have the same responses to hecklers, which I try not to do, but like sometimes it's hard to avoid especially because when you get a heckle, you get put on the spot, and you need to get a laugh out of it. It can be quite tense after you get a heckle, so you've got to have a fast line. So sometimes the easiest thing to do is just say Dad's home, or shut up Dad, or something, it's often the first thing that races into your mind is the hack response. Another one is like, if someone leaves the gig during the middle of the gig, you go, that's a poo, or something like that. It's like a real common, so it's not even funny, but that will be a real common thing you'll notice comedians do. So I had an awkward situation recently where someone heckled me, and I couldn't make out what they said, so I didn't even know I couldn't hear what they had given me to respond to it. So I just go, what was that? Shut up, Dad. And turns out after the gig I found out that it was my dad. He'd come along to the gig, and he regularly heckles me, and they never make sense, and they're never good. At one of my biggest gigs in my life, it was my first ever solo show. It was, because when you're doing a Billy T show, you do a comedy festival show that normally in New Zealand only weirdly goes for a week. So you only do like 6 shows, and the nights that have comps, that those will be the nights that the judges have come in. I don't know why they don't just pay for the ticket so you don't know what nights the judges are. And weirdly, there's only 5 judges, and 4 of them came on the same night. And it was a real tough gig, and that was the gig where my dad decided to heckle me. And afterwards he said, I was only trying to help. He wasn't. I had a joke that was about, the joke went like this, the reason he heckled is because it actually mentioned him. I said, I'm sick of people, mainly my dad, because when I was a kid, my dad used to point out the fact that ambulance is spelt backwards on the front of ambulances. And my joke was that, how many times are you driving along the road? It's so you can see the ambulance is spelt right if you look in the rearview mirror. But how many times are you driving along on the road and you look up in your rearview mirror and you see a big, white, ambulance-shaped ambulance with its sirens going and its lights flashing and think, that bloody Ignalumba is in a hurry? And the idea is that if it was ambulance, it would spell, I don't know why I'm explaining the joke, you guys get it. But so my dad, I guess he was offended that he was used in the setup to the joke, so he decided to yell out, they're called health shuttles now. So what he was referring to, no one gets that, Gary. No one gets what you're talking about. But he was referring to the fact that in Nelson, it's like an old folks' home, and the local old folks' places, they have health shuttles, not ambulances, because to get the old feel. So it's not scary. Like an ambulance is quite scary, but a health shuttle seems kind of nice. So I didn't know what to do with that, but it was funny, and I did get good laughs from just going, Dad, can you get the F out of the gig? And swearing at your dad is always funny. Yeah.
You mentioned before putting together, or trying to, all the way different comedians trying to string together a solo show.
Yeah.
And they're usually about an hour, and then there's but you start out doing sort of 7-8 minute sets.
Yeah.
But there's nothing really in between, is there? Or is there? Is it
oh,
all?
Yeah, you graduate. So last night I did 20 minutes.
Right.
Is anyone here interested in stand-up or anything like that? Any inspiring? Yeah. Okay, a few people. Yeah. Stand-up's, I'd highly recommend getting into it. I reckon stand-up comedy is the best, and I think every person in the world should do 5 minutes at a raw rookie competition or an open mic or something like that, because I think everyone has really good comedy material in them, but the hard thing is you can't find it. So no one knows, everyone starts stand-up, and my first gig was doing like my favorite comedians. I got into I didn't even know what comedy was. I grew up listening to Jerry Seinfeld, not even knowing that was what that was. My mum was mental, and she had a cassette tape of Jerry Seinfeld, and she really just played it over and it was a really good album. If anyone wants to hear it, it's called "I'm Telling You for the Last Time," and I know it off by heart because as a kid, every time she'd pick me up in the car, she'd have goddamn Jerry Seinfeld. I'm telling you for the last time. But when you're a kid, you don't know what that is. You're just like it's a man talking, doing a funny speech or something like that.
What's the deal with airlines?
Yeah, what's the deal? Yeah, that's a pretty good impersonation. It's really, it's got all those cliches in it. Like, it literally talks about chopsticks, airline food, Olympics are weird, dry cleaning is weird. But it's really funny, well written. It's like you talk about the comedians doing the same jokes over and over. These are like the best jokes he's done in his like 20-year career. It was him cashing in after Seinfeld finished. So he used to, I didn't even know what stand-up comedy was, even though I'd been listening to it my whole childhood. And then when I got to Victoria University, YouTube was invented. And this I think is really good for New Zealand comedy and has really lifted New Zealand comedy, is we can now easily see, as opposed to occasionally getting like Eddie Murphy Raw or something like that at the video store, or just occasional Chris Rock's dirty special on like Sky One late at night, just before the porno comes on. We had stand-up comedy like just coming in, so I actually love Chris Rock, and so I'd watch Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, and a few other comedians, but mainly Chappelle's my favourite, and then Chris Rock was one of my favourite. So I watched them on YouTube, and then did my first gig. So as a result, my first gig was racial comedy. So my first gig was like whiter Indian people work at dairies. It was like borderline racist. And I was literally doing an impersonation of what I thought comedy was, because I didn't know what made me funny, and I didn't know what was interesting about myself, and I was just, because I'd only seen Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle and of course the Jerry Seinfeld CD, I was just doing what I thought was comedy. And so I think every person should give stand-up a go, but the hard thing is guiding them into what is funny about them. Because if someone just talks about their weird life, like, I don't know, everyone's a weirdo, like you guys are all bloody weirdos, and you seem normal right now, but I know if I went to your house and looked around and looked at the weird things you got on your shelves and the weird things you do in your day-to-day routine, you'd find that everyone does really unusual things that are comedy, but it's just how you tap that, and if you're a rookie comedian, how you find that weird thing about you, which is really hard to do. But it takes giving it a try. So every person here, I'd recommend doing stand-up. And it's good, and even if you suck, it's good for confidence building and public speaking, which may or may not be a necessary skill. It was always really good for me because I always lacked comedy. I lacked comedy as well. I always lacked like confidence and stuff like that, and I really, now as you can tell, I've got way too much confidence. And the reason I've got that is because once you've done a stand-up comedy set where you've bombed your ass off, which I've done many a times, where you literally stand up on stage and get no laughs and everyone just awkwardly stares at you, and you leave stage to like literally just a couple of people like polite, like well done mate, never do that again. Once you've done that, you've been to rock bottom. It's like pretty much one of the worst humiliations you can, I'm sure there's worse humiliations, but it's right up there in terms of embarrassing things you can do. And then once I did that and hit rock bottom and realised it's not that bad, in fact I kind of enjoy it, then you develop a hell of a lot of confidence, because like, if that's the worst the gig can go, then you don't get so nervous anymore. Because I always had a big problem with stage fright and stuff like that.
When you say you enjoy it, I mean that kind of the comedy of failure.
Yeah.
The Larry David, Stephen Merchant legacy.
Yeah.
Has became quite the dominant mode.
Yeah, I reckon you're looking at it from the wrong way when you say comedy of failure, because it's more like everyone is failing at their life like 24/7. Like me just coming to this venue today, I was like high-fiving people and just saying hi to people, and I effed up about like five like handshakes and stuff like that. I'm so white. I like miss most of my high fives. Like, so it's not really the comedy of failure. It's just an observation that if you're white, high fives are bloody hard. And like white people like working on techniques and stuff, and they're like,
look at the elbow. Look at the elbow.
Line it up. Look at the elbow. Like, don't have a strategy. Like, don't do high five. Like, we'll have a training. It should be part of the schedule. It's like high five practice for white people. Real awkward thing. Dallas, who's lovely, she works at the festival. I went to high five her. I was like, I'd made it, and she was maybe nervous about me showing up or something like that. So she was like, oh, great, you made it. And I was like, hey, I often high five people. It's just my way of greeting people. I went for the high five, and she obviously is not as gangster as me. She like kind of grabbed my hand and kind of shook it. And I was like, bloody Dunedin's so white, eh? So it's not so much a comedy of failure, it's just an observation, because everyone gets in that awkward situation where you go for a high five and they go for a fist bump. Literally happens every day, and that is literally like, like good stand-up comedy. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, okay.
It's my biggest stand-up comedy tip, by the way, is just write ideas down. High five, grab. The good news is this guy here, I noticed you've been on your phone all the time. Are you writing stuff down at the moment?
Yeah, I'm writing.
Yeah, that's good, because that's a great thing about being like a comedy writer now, is that previously I used to carry around this awkward little notebook, and I used to get a 1B, one of those small notebooks like that, and I used to cut it in half. And so, cutting apart a notebook's real hard, and if anyone's tried it turns out real messy.
Especially long words.
Because I was writing like one-liners as well, I only need like a small, especially cut up that way. That'd actually be a better idea, because then you could write the jokes along it's actually a better idea. But now that smartphones have been invented, people just think you're texting your mates. I'm not, I got no mates. I'm writing down ideas, but if you're on the bus, or if you're having a conversation with a mate at dinner, and you pull out your book and write it down, they're like, you're the biggest loser if you're writing this down for material. But if you write it into your phone, it immediately...
Just looks like you're rude.
Yeah. He just comes... No, but it's normal in someone to just go, can I just do this? And just like, you write something down, and people don't even notice it. Or I sometimes, if I'm real confident, I'll like sing notes into my voice recorder on my phone. It's a good way to not seem like a murderer. Because when you're just like, when you're on the bus, and someone like says something weird, and then something like someone's like doing something weird on the bus, and then you like pull out a notebook and like start writing down. Like it's a really bad look. The worst thing about joke writing is that you forget the jokes instantly. You forget them instantly, so you have to write them down. I have to write down the exact wording. Like maybe if you're more of an improviser, you might write down the general idea, but I'll always write down word for word, at least what the punchline is. So I don't, because otherwise you think you remember it, even if you come up with a keyword to remember it, you'll definitely forget it. And the most frustrating thing to do is when you forget a joke because you start hyping up in your mind that it was a great joke that was going to change your life and career forever.
Are you a big eavesdropper? And how do you get away with it now that you are a recognizable, because you can't really sit stealthily next to someone.
Oh yeah, you do. Yeah, no, well, I'm not Kim Kardashian. Like most cafes.
Obviously.
But it's just something I enjoy. Does everyone enjoy that? I think there's a big thing about comedy is like finding observations, which are like things that everyone enjoys but no one wants to talk about. And I really enjoy, if I'm at a cafe and a juicy conversation's happening, I am listening in as much as I can. But I don't do it often, and I'd never be a mean thing. It's not. It's just a case. It's more. I wouldn't normally turn into comedy. It'd just be like, oh, that's scandalous. I'll listen to that. It's entertaining.
I can't remember where I saw this recently, but someone was talking about how how you see people talking to themselves, and it's like, what if all of the people in different cities talking to themselves are actually talking to each other?
Yeah.
Like a psychic string telephone.
Yeah.
Another question that we have darted up here. Were you always the class clown?
No.
Or did you start later? Yes, obviously.
No, never funny at all. Always very serious, and really into basketball growing up, and didn't do any sort of theatre or acting. And I've become a lot more juicy since I got older, because I just decided, F it, what's the point of being real serious? And so I wanted to be like a kind of a politician. I'm really interested in politics. That's how I actually switched over into comedy. It's quite just because you're obviously interested in politics and comedy as well. It's a weird combination. Just before me at university, I actually had a lecturer that was the same. Don't feel rude if you want to text, if you want to write notes, by the way. Don't feel rude at all. It's a compliment. Ben Hurley, before me at Vic, he did the exact same course as I did. And I remember actually asking one of my lecturers, who was he was proud because Ben Hurley was in The Listener or something like that. He's a comedian on 7 Days. And I actually remember being interested in comedy at the time and going, was Ben Hurley a good student? And he paused and said, he was a hilarious student. And I said, so no, he wasn't a good student, was he? But yeah, so I quite enjoyed, when I got into politics, I enjoyed just political quotes, and especially David Longy. So I remember just eventually whittling down my political science degree to just writing articles about like the oratory of David Longy. Am I saying that word right? Oratory, is that the word? The oratory of David Longy, or I started doing art stories, or like papers, essays on like joke political parties. Quite interested me, like McGillicuddy Serious Party, or Bill and Ben did a party. there's been quite a few in New Zealand, less under MMP now, because there's now actual genuine options for minority parties to vote for. The reason joke parties existed was because you wanted to throw away your vote. You didn't want to vote for Labour or National. You wanted to piss away your vote as a protest vote, so you'd vote for a joke party just to go, F the system, I hate it, and I want to have a laugh about it. And McGillicuddy's Serious Party was really funny as well. And David Longy was really, really funny. And John Keir's funny as well. I think it's a big part of his success, is how they use comedy. And so the comedy outside of politics really interested me, and then I segued into just forgetting about the comedy side of politics and just focusing on the comedy side of comedy. And I didn't answer any of that question. What was the question?
No, it's all right. No, you did. Were you always the class clown, or did you start later? That was the question.
Yeah, never. No, it was very serious and stuff like that. The class clown, though, like, school's quite weird. I always found some of the hardest I ever laughed at school was at other students. But the class clown was normally like the kind of like slightly maybe problem child. You know, the kid who would like jump off the roof of the school for $1 or something like that was always like the kid that left school at 15 and just had like behavioural problems and stuff like that. Like the funny kid, like you're not gonna get up in front of a Nelson Boys College class and say like a witty one-liner and like kill. Plus, I didn't really watch comedy. Like I wasn't allowed to when I was a kid. I didn't have that conservative a family, but I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons until I was like awkwardly like 15 or something like that. So I didn't know what comedy was until Jerry Seinfeld. An interesting story I wanted to say, because I think that's a really interesting angle. I can't believe I'm asking my own questions now. But I think comedy and politics is really interesting. And I think people always go, why do people like John Keir so much? Because he's a guy, people want to have a beer with him. And I think it's so important, and it's especially now, as politics becomes more and more dumbed down, to really use good sound bites and good jokes. And to come across as approachable, and you in every mode of business or anything you do, using comedy I think is always a weapon. The problem is it can often go very wrong, like the number of times I say an awkward thing in a meeting, and like, you know, especially with corporate people or business people, the joke might go the wrong way, or especially if you've got a bad sense of humour and you make a sexist joke and you actually work yourself out of a job or out of a gig or out of a position or out of a political role or something. I'm sure there's been a lot of politicians who've got themselves into trouble for. I think just on the weekend there was an American politician who made a joke about Joe Biden's son dying. And it's like, a lot of us have real bad sense of humour, and you've got to suppress that. And like, even if you think it's funny that someone's died, don't say that out loud. One of the first.
I hope you're writing these down.
One of the first rules of comedy. Yeah, keep that joke inside. Keep it bottled down inside. Keep it suppressed. I'm all for free speech, but there's certain things you should probably stay away from. And I often cross that line, and people often perceive me as joking about things that shouldn't be joked about. But I have my things I think should be joked about and whatnot. But politics and comedy, and a lot of people hate the jokes John Keir makes, and a lot of people are offended by them. And definitely the ponytail, like that's not. No one thought that was a good joke. He was like, it's like fun and games. It's like there's nowhere that's ever been fun and games. It's like it's just banter. I don't think you know what banter means, mate, because that's not banter. But John Keir generally has a good. I remember I tried to. We had him on the edge, and I was like, what would be a funny thing to do with John Keir? And I was like, what we'll do is we'll ask him the worst possible questions. So just get open and loose to the YouTube commenters. Like just go text in your worst questions, and I'll ask him those. So people are texting in like, why are you killing the Maui dolphins and stuff like that. And he actually won me over. Like he was like really good. I'm like I'm quite strongly left wing, and I'd really like to see a change of government. But John Keir really impressed me with like he would say. So I go, why are you killing the Maui dolphins? And he was like, ooh, and it was like not awkward at all. He just without a matter of the beat. He's like, I go, why are you killing the Maui dolphins? And he goes, who's killing the Maui dolphins? And I go, there's only 95 left. And he goes, there's not 95 left. There's actually 98. And it was kind of like a joke, because he was like trying to go, excuse me, it's not as bad as you think it is. There's 3 more dolphins than you thought there was. And it was quite impressive that he knew that off the top of his head as well. And then he goes, and do you know how I knew that? And he goes, because I drained the ocean. And I counted them all. And I was like, that is a really good joke, John Keir. You nailed that. And all our listeners think you're a good guy, and you nailed it. And the flip side of that, unfortunately, is Andrew Little, who we always want to get politicians on our show for John and Ben, and they're never keen except for obviously 2 months before an election when they're keen as two beans. But this is quite good because Andrew Little, obviously, no one knows who he Labour's changed their leader like 6 times in the last 2 years, and he has such a low No, it's not. It's not. I don't think he's low on preferred prime minister just because they don't know. They're disagreeing with his policies. I think just because they don't know who he is. So he's trying to raise his profile. So they're like, we'll have him on John and Ben. So we're like, great. We almost scratched like Benny Tiffany. We're like, piss off, Benny. We're like, great. We scratched like whoever we had lined up, and we decided what we needed to do with him was just a wacky. It's so hard because you pitch ideas to celebrities and politicians and stuff, and they turn down all the good ones, and then you're left with like the lamest idea. So basically what we ended up with was just like a wacky game with him, which is recreating a YouTube video called YouTube, yeah, and we wanted him just to fold some shirts. At first it was a challenge, you win some money for someone in the audience and stuff like that if you complete the challenge in 30 seconds or whatever. And before he comes on, you do a little bit of an interview with him just to go, hey Andrew, how's it going, mate? What's new with you? Oh, what's wacky? And we normally, with a talk show or something, you try and get them to like bring a funny story or try and milk a funny story out of them. And he was stone cold talent. Every joke we tried to make to him, he was worried about offending people, which is right. As a politician, you must be terrified about saying the wrong thing and getting yourself into hot water. But he was too scared of that. And John Key obviously is the other way, and he often offends people because he'll go too far the other way. But there's definitely a line you've got to trend. Obama, I think, does it really well. I don't know how. He's some sort of genius, but he somehow seems to nail the line. He probably has a lot of writers working for him as well. But he seems to nail the line with his comedy. But this is quite an improvised situation. So we were throwing some the kind of jokes were like, John Key's into ponytails, what's your fetish, kind of thing like that. We're kind of throwing things at him, and he kind of would just try and like bat it away. But as a result, he came across as like humorless and like really serious. And then he went to he was just terrible. So we did we did an awkward, terrible interview, and then eventually we're like, wrap that up. And then we're like, we'll go to the shirt folding wacky bit. He was terrible at that, and what's weird about that is he actually did the first shirt, like he actually did the challenge right. He did the first shirt. It's an amazing thing where you can grab the shirt in two places, pull it like a magic trick, and it will fold like a men's polo shirt. He did the first one, nailed it, and he had to do like 10, and then he just fell apart. And he literally just started like bowling up the shirts and just putting them in a pile. And it was real awkward, and I had the confetti cannon ready because the YouTube, we don't want to make the people look bad, so the chances are that we choose something they can do. He clearly hadn't done it, but we don't want to go, excuse me, leader of the Labour Party and important politician, F off, you failed, get off the show, you loser, and then, hey girl who thought you were going to win $500 for him completing the challenge, you don't get the 5 challenge, piss off the show, you loser. So we decided just to pretend like he'd done it, and we kind of all looked at each other, and then I just popped the confetti can, and we go, you've won $500! And we're like, yay! And what we had to do is, it was so awkward. I hate to reveal the secrets of the trade, but Jono and Ben's recorded on a Thursday. We had to bloody re-edit the show, because that's supposed to be the finale of the show, like Andrew Little doing this wacky challenge. We had to re-move him into early in the show. We couldn't cut him. We wanted to cut him off the show, but we couldn't because, for whatever reason, the way we'd teased him or something, we just had to have him in the show because we'd advertised that he was going to be on the show. So we had to move him to an earlier part of the show. And I actually don't know what to do. And I actually thought, I was like, should I send a cheeky email to his press secretary going, hey, lovely to have Andrew Little on the show. Thanks for coming on. Would love to have him again in some capacity. But this is definitely a thing that if he wants to be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand, he needs to work on. Because he actually probably, in the brief time that he was on our show, in the 3 minutes, he probably did more harm than good. Like, if anything, I feel like for the people who watched it, and probably for the people who watched it on TV, they just thought, not voting for that loser. He's humorless. He couldn't nail the shirt folding challenge, which is real easy. And he's got no talent. And the exact same thing happened with the last Labour leader, David Shearer, where we
Second to last, even.
Yeah, we couldn't get any interview. John Key was so big in just nailing the Prime Minister No, Shearer was actually good. Shearer was okay. We've had Shearer on the show many times. He's willing to make fun of himself. Yeah. Me and him had a band. We like wore me and Shearer played, because he plays the guitar quite well. And so we wore like fedoras and had this like real loser band. It was like Guy Williams and the Shearers or something like that. And I was like the singer, and he's like playing the guitar. He was actually quite funny. But David Cunliffe. They've had like, part of their PR problem is they've had like 8 leaders called David, eh? Cunliffe was absolutely humorless as well, which is fine as a politician. Like, Clark didn't have a great sense of humour, but you better have your other shit together. It does help if you have humour, but you can be humorless. But to put it in context, we couldn't get access to John Key because he was too popular, and we couldn't get access to Shearer because he thought he was too important, when really he desperately needed the publicity. Like, he should have come on. He should have been doing everything because he was polling so badly, and he went out like an idiot when it eventually happened. Thanks for coming, guys. Bloody appreciate it. See you later. Those guys going to the toilet. Comedy, nailing it. we couldn't get Key because he was too big. We couldn't get Shero because he didn't want to come on our show. So we decided the election's coming in a week. We're doing an election special. We need to get one of the political leaders, not just a minor party leader, on our show. So what we'll do is we'll go for the ambush technique, which is what you go for when you're failing at everything, which is what I normally do because no one wants me to come along to anything. So we got Rose. I wasn't available that day, so we got Rose to hang outside TV3, the main building, because we're like in this weird building out that we're not allowed in the main building. The cheese factory. We got Rose to hang outside, and when they did their debate with John Campbell, we knew there's no indoor garage at TV3, so they had to come out the doors. So we had Rose waiting there with the camera to harass them when they came out. And so John Key comes out first, and he nails it. So Rose had a wacky question. She's known for speed dating and stuff like that. So her wacky question was, would you like to come on a date with me sometime? And then he'd go, where to? And she'd say like a wacky movie. She interviews John Key. Not only does he agree to go on the date, but he starts suggesting movies. And it was just really funny, and he makes jokes, like Bronner might not be too keen and stuff like that, but we won't tell her and stuff like that. And then, when she's finished with her little bit, you kind of expect the Prime Minister just to, with his security, because he's got like 8 guys around him, to like keep on rolling on. He actually goes, is that all your questions? Like he was disappointed that was he's in the middle of like an election campaign, and then she was awkward because she was like, why didn't I think of a second question? Like, could have asked him anything. Could have asked him why he's killing the Maui dolphins. Could have asked him anything. Could have asked him why he's into, or he wouldn't have had the ponytail thing at there, but like, could have asked him why he loves awkward handshakes so much or something like that. And she had no more questions, and he said, all right, thank you, goodbye. And so as a result, he went to the top part of the show, the most watched part of the show, like the part 1, and everyone loved it, and everyone was like, John Key's the man. Shera comes out next, and Shera didn't just blank her, like walked right past her and kind of ignored her, but as she went with him and kind of yelled at him like, would you like to come on the date to the movies? He stopped, real arrogantly kind of turned to her and just goes, sorry, I don't have time for that, I'm too busy planning the future of New Zealand. And it was so awkward and lame. Rose didn't even have a good comeback to him. He just looked like a knob. And it was just another good example of where he could have easily just been a warm and welcoming and kind of a person with a bit of a sense of humour. It didn't even have to be funny, and it would have come across really well on screen, like John Key had done, really easy. And he hadn't done that, and I just think it's not the main reason that the Labour Party's in the doldrums, but it would definitely help if they had like a certain amount of comedy. And that's why my dream is to one day maybe help with like political messages and putting a little bit of humour into it. Of course, the problem is if your jokes are not received well, it can go really badly as well.
Do you have any more questions in the audience? I've run out of things that were thrown at me.
Yes.
Nathan?
What is your opinion of the fact that a lot of New Zealand comedy now
Yeah.
is your base stuff is your 7 Days, your John and Ben.
Yeah.
Is it still possible to do a full sketch show? I mean, like
No.
issues, skits,
No.
or has the internet basically put them in?
No, this is the problem, there's just no money to do it. The problem with sketch shows is they're real hard. So John and Ben, I think we don't get enough credit for us. We got really ripped in the New Zealand Herald. We got reviewed really badly recently. We've just gone to an hour. And it was Duncan Grieve, who was here yesterday, who reviewed us.
Yeah.
He
Spoke very highly of you in that review.
he kisses my ass. We're friends. He's got to review me well, otherwise I'll dunk on him at the basketball court. So he reviewed us poorly, and I think there was some. I was like, give us a few positives. And one of the things I think John and Ben, we do really good sketches, and it's all thanks to there's a really good comedian who came down here for the Fringe Festival called Nick Sampson. He's a really good writer, and there's a couple of other people as well who are great. All the people who are going for all the stand-ups in Auckland are doing a lot of really good talent in New Zealand at the moment, but him especially have made some really good, and they've only got like 4,000 views and shit on YouTube. They're not even very popular. Like, the most popular stuff is like, the next actors and the pranks and the stupid stuff is what works well. And that's why people always go, oh, why did John and Ben do juvenile shit? It's because that's what rates really well in terms of if you put it on YouTube, look at the views. And the most popular video is often the stuff I hate the most. It's like they're just sliding down Queen Street on skateboards on their tummy. And then the smart, funny sketches normally go really tepidly. But some of the sketches are really good. I think it's some of the best sketches New Zealand's ever done. So there's definitely the writers around to write good sketches, and there's potential. There's a lot of good like theatre people and stuff who could do proper sketches with narratives and stuff like that. But the problem is that the only comedy they want to do, John and Ben's probably like the most expensive one. Like, it's all real low budge now. So like they're really looking for like panel shows, 7 days, like, is, besides the talent being quite expensive, like, because they've been successful, it's so cheap to make. Like, it's just two teams of people sitting. And that's all they do in the UK and America. In the UK, it's just like panel show after panel show after panel show. It is good as well. Just putting stand-up on TV, they often notice that will be filler. Like, they have weird stand-up specials that will happen at like 10:30 at night.
With Brendan Lovegrove.
Brendan Lovegrove, yeah. Not so much anymore.
I'm Brendan Lovegrove.
Yeah. Now it's more like the 7 Day guys, and like, you'll notice I'm on a lot of them as well. But yeah, that is these weird filler shows. Stand-up's cheap because you pay us a couple $100 and we got there and you fill an hour. The problem with that is you burn, as a comedian, you burn your material. You can't do it all the time live anymore. I still do it. I don't have any integrity. But yeah, they're just looking for real cheap things. So the good news is that there's heaps of opportunities to get comedy on TV. The bad news is the comedy's got to have zero budget. So like, good example is we did an Extra Factor show, a show after X Factor called Extra Factor on 4, where it was awesome. We got to sit on a couch and just talk shit about X Factor for half an hour. It was so cool. It was like, for me, it was a dream, just talking, saying jokes, joking about the contestants, interviewing them, saying funny things. But the thing is, the show had nothing to it. It was literally just some cameras and some people sitting on a couch. There was no production budget whatsoever. So that's unfortunately the reality. So it really, sketch is very expensive, just like drama is expensive. So it's going to be really hard to make unless like the government funds it, I think.
Is that more the fault, if I may, more the fault of reality TV? Seeming they can put reality TV in. And
People always blame reality TV for. It really annoys me how people blame reality TV. And don't get me wrong, I don't think reality TV is great, but it's just supply and demand. It's like that's what people watch. It's like, why is the most common restaurant McDonald's? It's because that's what sells the most food. And so you can make. There's been a lot of really good comedies in New Zealand made recently that no one watches. One I auditioned for and failed to get was Cover Band. The Download Concept makes really good shows in Auckland, and they made Cover Band. I didn't even know it was on, and I'm a comedy fan in New Zealand. I don't know where TVNZ put it, but it would have been on at like...
about 10:30 at night.
Yeah, 10:30 at night, and I was in Hounds briefly.
Yeah.
Hounds was bloody good, and it's pretty good. And it's really hard to make a scripted comedy as well. And it's on at 10, and Super City by Madeline Sami. So many shows that the 10 o'clock. See, the thing about John and Ben, one of the reasons it's successful as well is because we literally made the show thinking this is going to be watched by a 10 o'clock audience. So that's why it's fast paced, not boring. We do think about like, will drunk people be into this? Because often 10 o'clock at night, people, you go into after work drinks, come home a bit pissed, switch on the TV, you watch the end of the rugby and then watch John and Ben. We're actually aiming at it thinking this is what a 10 o'clock tired as audience is going to be into. So you don't do long, boring bits and stuff like that. And that's the only time slot that works for TV3. So the shows that were put there didn't work in that area and no one backs the comedy. And I thought the future of sketch comedy for New Zealand was Rhys Darby, because I always thought that was my dream for make a TV show. I was like, if you get real famous, so people definitely watch your show, then you can do whatever you want. Because one of the big problems with comedy is that the TV network will tell you what to do and what to change, and will F up your show. Like, for example, in Hounds, I think the dogs were all named after New Zealand serial killers. So there was like, the dogs were called like Bane and Lundy and stuff like that. And of course, the day before the show was about to start, one of the trials came up again. I think it was the Lundy trial, something like that. And as a result, they had to rename all the dogs and re-edit with bad voiceover, like the name of it. It was a really big thing. And it was partly their fault for taking such a risque, making such a risque gag. But the network really pushed their hand. Like, it probably would have been, TV3 was just worried about the bad publicity they were going to get. And so that's a big problem, is the network pushing you around and telling you what you should and shouldn't do. The good thing about TV3 is there's so little people working there that there's not many. We don't get many checks, but like the guy who's supposed to check our show hardly watches it, which has been really helped. But you often get pushed around, and I was like, Rhys Darby's so big and so famous that no one will push him around. But he had a show, Short Poppies, which was like 6 episodes, and TVNZ pushed him around to the max. Like he got an on-air announced, and it was like, it's going to come out, and then they're like, no, it's not coming out. So it got cancelled basically before it even come out, and then so he sold it to Netflix, and then TVNZ panicked, and then it got released on the internet, which means like your cult audience is it was just an absolute disaster. And so as a result, I see no future. Grim future.
Yeah. Arthur?
I was quite excited with like John and Ben. Like, a lot of it, there's a potential for talking about other shows within the kind of.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, with the commercial environment, are there jokes they tell you can't tell because it's about Mike Hosking or someone on another channel? Or
Yeah, so it's really, really interesting how TV in New Zealand works, and radio too, to be honest. So when Letterman is on television, he's on a channel called CBS.
CBS.
Or something. I don't even know what other shows are on that channel. Is it big?
All the CSI shows, I think.
CSI, yeah. So for example, he can't every night interview goddamn the people on that, I don't know, MacGyver, whoever's on CSI. I don't know, but so as a result, on American talk shows, even though Jimmy Fallon is NBC, he talks to people from Fox, from every other channel, from ESPN. It doesn't matter. You just interview celebrities, and that's the way it works in America. It's a big market, and you can't just interview people on your own channel. But in New Zealand, weirdly, like if you do a TV3 show, you're like limited to TV3 talent. If you do a TVNZ show, limited to TVNZ talent. But the good thing about TV3 is that, again, we don't have enough people telling us what to do. We've never been told that we're not allowed to have someone because they're TVNZ or something like that. The problem is that TVNZ get told they're not allowed to come on our show. So we always wish we could have, because it's one of the biggest shows, Short and Street talent. And we can only ever get ex-Short and Street talent, because Short and Street talent is just, they even agree to do it, and then they're not allowed to. And we show Short and Street clips all the time, and people are like, you're giving them free advertising. Yeah, but we're benefiting, like it's rising both ships at the same time. And chances are, if you're watching our show and laughing at Short and Street, you're not a huge Short and Street viewer either. But so the problem with that is that there's another show, which apparently is quite good. I've hardly watched it, called Best Bits, which is a panel show made by the same guy who makes 7 Days, the download concept, the guys who make Hounds. They did a comedy show. They do a comedy show every night, and they preyed on me revealing their secrets. I don't even know if this is true. I've never worked on the show. It's TVNZ. But apparently the word is that they aren't allowed to joke about TVNZ shows, which is really annoying because they're the most watched shows in New Zealand. That's New Zealand's Got Talent, Shortland Street, 7 Sharp. So they get clips from TV shows, but not the ones that people are watching. So as a result, it kind of F's your show a little bit. Because I think the biggest strength of like topical comedy shows is that you kind of watch the week of crap that you see in news and stuff like that, and at the end of the week, the comedians will make jokes about it. And that's the great thing about comedy. It scratches itches that you want to be scratched. So I really like the idea of watching a whole week of bullcrap on X Factor and then seeing what Jono and Ben or 7 Days will say about that. And Best Bits can't do that because they can't comment on their own shitty shows, just because TVNZ is very old school. And they're worried that it'll like ruin the good name of Shorten Street or something like that, you know? So here's the bad thing. So on our show, as a result, you might have noticed this, and this might have been where your question came from, we only seem to interview TV3 people. Like we're always interviewing bloody Dancing with the Stars, X Factor, just because they're the only celebs we can get. All Blacks, rugby players never want to come on. Occasionally we can get them, but like Warriors, but they're just, the New Zealand Rugby Union's really strict, and they're always worried that we're going to do bad things with them, which normally we are, so probably fair enough. Shortland Street, not allowed. So any actors who want to work on TVNZ will probably stay away from us or big shows, because it's not, I mean, they get a bit of publicity from coming on our show, but the benefits aren't huge. So the only people we can get are the people we bully, like, so Stan Walker, X Factor people, and it's a real shame. And so when Andrew Little and stuff, people who aren't from TV3 come to our show, we're like, we'll have you on in a second. And then, unfortunately, don't your heroes always let you down? But every week we try and get, like, we always want John Key, we always want the big celebrities on our show. We'd have Mike Hosking. The weird thing is Mike Hosking's wife appears on our show. So we rip 7 Sharp all the time because it's very easily rippable. 2 nights ago, Mike Hosking said, he's talking about the jetpack when he does his Fox News like wrap up at the end, and he's like, a good idea is a good idea forever. That's literally a David Brent from The Office quote. That's a joke, and he's saying it. And if John and Ben was on air, we could mirror those two, like we could literally play them saying it. He's like morphing into. But the weird thing is that Mike Hosking he's not a fan of the show, but his wife and his kids are. So he's been on it to our show before he was on 7 Sharp, before we were ripping him all the time, which is kind of awkward dynamic. I worry about all the time, man, because I really can't stand Hosking. I really disagree with his politics. And so talking about itch I need to scratch, I really like taking shots at Hosking. It's fun to, especially if it's pressure applied upwards, to punch something that, you know, you can't make go away. That's what jokes are. They're like little soft little punches. And I really want to rip Hosking, but at the same time I'm kind of friends with his wife, who kind of works on our show time. Her name's, I say friends, close personal friends, Twitter friends, and I see her when she comes on the show, Kate Hawkesby. She appears on a show. She does a segment called Fake News occasionally. And she does it for free. She doesn't even get paid. And she's awesome. Like, she's the best person. And her kids come to the show. Her kids are fun. Saw them at X Factor the other day. And I kind of awkwardly, she appeared the other day on our show. She's so good to us, and I go, sorry about ripping your husband, mate. And I don't know why I'm apologising, because I'm like, I'm not really sorry. But there's the real awkward situation I get into, and the awkward situation I personally get into more and more as I get to know more and more people, is if I'm taking shots at people, once you get to know them personally, it becomes harder and harder to do that. It's really hard for me to rip X Factor this year because I worked on it. As I said, I was doing that little comedy show. So some of my more stinging tweets maybe or jokes I'd hold back just because I actually knew the people personally. And it's always hard to make jokes about people. If you met Mike Hosking personally, he'd probably be a really nice, lovely, awesome guy.
Seems likely.
A few whacked out ideas. What'd you say?
Seems likely.
No, he would be. You say that. He would honestly, if you hung out with him, he'd be awesome. He'd give you rides in his Ferrari. He would buy you drinks. He'd be very charismatic. Everyone I've hated who I've got to know afterwards, they've always been pretty much been good, except for Sonny Bill. But the weird thing about him is that I've liked him. I always liked him, and now we're bad terms, and I feel real bad about it. I did a tweet about Sonny Bill, and he hated me now. So it's real sad because I actually really like Sonny Bill, and I highly recommend him. He's an A-class guy, lovely guy. In terms of rugby players, one of the best talents.
What did you say?
The joke was, me and Sonny Bill have a long history. So I've always joked, and partly because he inspired it. So I sung to him once at a press conference, and as a result, I've since followed him to Japan. I've had a relationship, but he moved to Australia and played rugby there and kind of lost interest. The storyline kind of ran its course. And he came back to New Zealand recently, and I did a joke during the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. It's not even that good a joke, but it was a boxing joke, because he once did a boxing fight that was there's a lot of explaining to make this joke funny. It's not a very funny joke. If you do a lot of explaining, it's not going to work very well. The joke was, what do you reckon, Sonny Bill? Do you reckon this Mayweather-Pacquiao fight is going to go 12 rounds or just a standard boxing 10? Because he once did a boxing fight that went 10 rounds. They called it early because it looked like he was going to lose, so they're like, cut that. So it was obviously a sensitive spot for him and it offended him, so he blocked me. So I went down to Hamilton. To kind of jokingly confront him about it, and he was genuinely not that jokey about, which is weird. He's always been really jokey with me. He's always been the kind of guy fake, he wanted to put me in a headlock and pretended to choke me. Funny joke. But I was randomly interviewing someone. He just came and took me out, kind of thing. It was quite funny. So he's normally always joked around, but I went to see him at a Hamilton press conference, and he kind of knew I was coming because we kind of asked him at the press conference. They hadn't allowed me to come, and I was kind of so I had to find where the press conference was. It was in the tennis centre. There was almost that I moved it so I wouldn't turn up, and I showed up and saw him, and he kind of did a few jokes that were kind of "Don't make me kick your ass on TV," which we had to cut out because they were almost too dark, because they kind of made him look bad. But then he genuinely just was I think you're a. He said he thought I was two-faced. I was nice to him to his face, and then on Twitter and stuff and on the show I was kind of joking about him, which is I thought I was doing matey jokes. And the weird thing is when he said I was two-faced, my opening line was "Sonny Bill, what you up to, you punk bitch?" And I was like, two-faced? I just called you a punk bitch to your face. I was like, that's literally the worst thing I've ever called you. I don't know why you called me two-faced. I'm the same terrible face, both off air and on air. But yeah, so he was kind of hurt by my comments, which I genuinely feel bad about. But at the same time, if you can't handle a ribbing on Twitter, good luck against the Wallabies in the Rugby World Cup. There's going to be tougher adversity that you're going to face than a joke. But there's something I constantly get in trouble for is jokes and crossing that line and stuff like that.
Do I have time to ask one more question?
One more question. I've really enjoyed this. I don't know if anyone else has. But as you can tell, I'm very self-absorbed and really enjoy talking about myself.
You say that you don't enjoy doing pranks so much as part of the Jono and Ben universe.
Yeah.
Is it ironic then that, your break in television was a prank, essentially?
Yeah, but
on Breakfast News.
Yeah, or it depends what you just... it's what you describe as a prank. When I hear the word prank, I think of really negative connotations around it. So, as I said, for me with comedy, it's about hitting things that annoy you. So you take frustration and you turn it into a joke. So if you get annoyed by John Key's ponytail gate, then you tweet jokes about it, or you do jokes about it on John and Ben or on stage. One of my favourite jokes I do at the moment on stage during stand-up is I really do jokes about, because it's really weird. I know the budget was actually a bit better, but it's really weird how they knocked down that food and that child, I can't remember what the bill was called.
Feed the kids.
Feed the Kids, the Feed the Kids bill, which is the way they snappily marketed it. The National Party slapped that down, and I felt really annoyed by that they didn't just pass that bill, because it would have been cheap, it would have been a good solution, it would have been good for their PR. I don't know what was their reasons? You never know what the reasons are behind. You never know. I'm so interested to find out why Campbell Live got canned. I've talked to the CEO about it. Don't know why. You always want to know. But I was really annoyed about that bill, and so one of the jokes I do at the moment is I pretend I'm a really big John Key supporter, and I'm like, of course. And people go, Guy, you're a John Key supporter. How's the joke go? I did it last night. Guy, you're a really big John Key supporter. Does that mean you don't care about the starving children? I'm like, of course I care about the starving children. I don't want to see kids starve. That's why I live in Epsom. And the idea is that I live in a rich neighbourhood in Auckland, so I don't have to see the kids suffering. So it's irony, and so I enjoy like taking shots at that in a light-hearted way, and hopefully didn't go that well then, but normally getting some good laughs out of doing it. So yeah, it's taking shots at things you like. And one of the things that really annoyed me years ago was Paul Henry, because he's quite racist and often his jokes are quite inappropriate. I think he's a really funny guy, but I just thought he needed to be taken down a peg. So I did a prank where we made up we realised that breakfast TV would just put anything on.
Yeah.
So we made up saying that my dream was to do like some sort of charity where I was in a wheelchair, and I wanted to, but we realised it would seem like I was making fun of people in wheelchairs, which I definitely didn't want to do. But I just wanted to do the joke if I wanted to wheel on for whatever my charity was, and then go, thanks very much for the interview, and then get up and just like walk out of my wheelchair. But we couldn't. We decided that would backfire on me. So what we did is we made up a real stupid campaign. We made up legalise whaling. Whaling was one of the big political stories of the day. Whaling in Japan, they're still whaling, and so we wanted to get whaling legalised so we could start whale farms. And I pretended like I was a libertarian politician whose dream was to start a whale meat industry, to start whale farms so we'd have more whales. The idea is that chickens don't go extinct because we eat chickens, so we want to keep them alive. There's a financial incentive. So I started like a website and stuff like that, and literally it worked so well. Like within a day of making a website, I got a call from the Sunday News, the story with them, and then out of the Sunday, that legitimised it. Shows how bad the New Zealand media is, eh? And as a result of reading my story in the Sunday News, they booked me the next day for breakfast, get picked up in a corporate cab, went there. I did like an 8-minute, it's on YouTube, I did an 8-minute interview with Paul Henry about the benefits of whale farming, advertising my website, Commercial Whaling New Zealand. And I left the interview. It wasn't even very funny. Like I left the interview. It was just a normal interview, and the prank didn't even work until a couple of hours later when someone from TVNZ recognised me as being someone who does stand up, and that was my big break. It was on the front page of the New Zealand Herald the next day. And another reason to show how bad the journalism is that Paul Henry was clearly pranked. If you watch the video, he does the whole interview, thought it was fine. He enjoyed talking to me. I reckon he was into the idea. To give you an example of how into it was, to give proof, this is how unpranked they were. I had a hat that I'd made, like saying commercial whaling. I gave him the hat. He left it on his desk, like advertising the website, for the rest of the interview. And it actually made it from the Sunday News into breakfast. The way breakfast works is they do interviews with people in the morning, and then that makes it into Peter Williams' news cycle. So every half an hour after I'd appeared on the thing, it was part of Peter Williams' news. A petition is starting today to help legalise commercial whaling in New Zealand. They made it part of their news cycle. So until about 12, if I didn't get found out as a comedian, I was on there, my name was Jay Pryor, like it was pretty big giveaway that I was bad. It almost would have gone huge, I reckon. If we'd chosen someone less known than me, for being a comedian, if we'd just chosen like a normal punter off the street, it would have gone like international. So we kind of were disappointed it only made it to the front page of the New Zealand Herald. And the New Zealand Herald let him off the hook. Paul Henry, they called him up and he goes, yeah, I knew it was a prank the whole time, but what can you do? You have a laugh? He didn't know it was a prank at all. He got off the hook. And now I have to work with Paul Henry. In conclusion.
Well, Guy Williams, thanks for coming.
Thank you all so much for coming along. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Aaron.